everybody. Oh, it's my shelf. Hi, welcome. It's time for Hot for Teacher. One of those days where I'm slightly off center, and so the camera always thinks that it's a show about my shelf. See, and it's not even cooperating. Hi, I'm over here. Hello there. Yeah, there we go. This is like a totally normal thing that happens every week. Hot for shelf. I'm gonna move over just so that my equipment can get its shit sorted out. But thank you for coming, everybody. This is episode number 36 of Hot for Teacher. Still doesn't like me. There we go. Let me just gently ease back into my spot. There we go. So anyway, if you haven't watched Hot for Teacher before, the reason that I'm sitting all the way over here on this side is that this space right here is going to be filled with text in just a minute. And that text is going to come from you, my audience, or rather it already has. And it's going to be the text of a question. We're going to do it 3 times. I'm going to be talking about 3 topics, answering 3 questions, and just kind of like meandering about in the human relationship space. So what we do here on Hot for Teacher is every week I take 3 questions from you, and nominally we answer those questions, right? I offer kind of suggestions or advice or point you in the direction of other people or services that can provide you with that advice. I'm going to tell you to talk to the people around you. I'm going to tell you if it's reasonable and affordable for you, if you can make it happen, get a therapist, get a counselor. I'm going to tell you to be open-minded, but respect your and other people's boundaries. And everything more than that is going to be specific advice. Now, the questions came from my website via your brain at www.adam-coble.com. There is a Hot for Teacher link. If you click that, there's a little form you can fill out, and you can anonymously ask questions. You can put your name on them, whatever you like. And every time we do an episode, I answer 3 questions. That's how the show works. Now, you might have noticed up here a little graphic that's not usually floating about. It was in the pre-show as well. Today's episode of Hot for Teacher. Now, I don't think I've ever done an office hours or Hot for Teacher like ad or sponsorship or anything like that. And this isn't really that either, but I wanted to use this space where we sometimes talk about these kinds of things. I wanted to use this space to dedicate today's episode to Trans Lifeline. It's a charity, and they connect trans people to resources and communities that help support them and help them thrive. So they're in the middle of a fundraiser right now called Trans Heart October. You'll probably see it a bunch on Twitch. There are a bunch of trans streamers they're doing their thing. The spotlight is for them. Go and check them out. You know, hang out in the LGBTQIA tag on Twitch if you're watching content. Try to find some streams that are supporting Trans Heart October and go check that out. The thing is, like, LGBT folks, especially trans folks, especially in North America, are under pretty significant risk of having their rights stomped on, revoked, or just flat out ignored. And groups like Trans Lifeline can really help people who are in that situation. So if you are a trans person and you look to groups like this for support, check out Trans Lifeline. They are there for you. You are the purpose. This is why. Or if you're like me and you have a little extra cash lying around and you want to help, hit up that TLL chat command. Or if you're watching this on YouTube or listening to it, go into the description. There's going to be a link. Check it out. See what kinds of stuff Trans Lifeline is up to, and support your trans friends, whether you know them or not, because, you know, they need it right now. They need all the support they can get. So, yeah, today's episode dedicated to Trans Heart October. Thank you to Trans Lifeline for reaching out, and thank you to all of the other like cool trans broadcasters that are doing stuff this month. Go and check them out as well. And like, encourage your friends to do so. Talk to people, engage in conversations about this stuff. It's important. We got to look after each other because God knows the system isn't going to do it for us. So let's answer some questions. Let's talk about some relationship stuff. Let's talk about feelings, whether ours or someone else's. Let's discuss some things. So our first question comes from Abby, which is backwards. I think traditionally people are writing to Abby to ask for advice. So this is a question from Abby. And it's about getting married. So Abby says, hello, I am a transgender non-monogamous woman. I don't believe in forever. I don't want to have kids. I don't want to get married. Or so I thought. I'm in a deeply romantic relationship with a girl who's making me feel things I've never felt before. For the first time, I'm getting feelings of wanting to marry someone, and it terrifies me. I have negative opinions on marriage, having rarely seen it work out for others in my life, but now I'm with someone I'm imagining living with and possibly getting married to. We've talked about it some. She knows how I feel about the whole thing and respects those feelings, but still wants to marry me if I want to as well. Well, that sounds nice. I don't want other people I'm in relationships with of any kind to feel less valued or left out. I'm afraid of the pressure marriage can bring, and I'm afraid of the legal stuff. Also, it doesn't feel necessary for a strong, deeply connected relationship, but the fluff of the idea of it all is getting to me. The celebration of love and the gendered aspect to it, the latter of which I thought I'd never get the chance to experience, sounds so wonderful. Like getting called wife or wearing a wedding dress and all that saccharine silliness. And just the fact that someone wants this with me hits me really hard. What do I do with all of this? I'd still like to live with her for a while before I fully decide on anything. We've talked about maybe having a ceremony and leaving the legal stuff out. This is unknown territory for me. It's difficult to think rationally about it. Any advice? Well, Abby, I have lots and lots of thoughts about marriage and getting married, but keep in mind that I am who I am. I'm an aromantic person, and marriage, the big smooshy romance part of it, I'm going to try to see it from someone else's perspective, because from my perspective, it's gross and weird. There's a whole bunch going on here for Abby. And it sounds to me like most of what's happening, and this is really nice because a lot of the time people will submit questions and they're like, they're in a rough place. And that isn't to say that like that's not appropriate or normal. Like asking for advice and reaching out to other people, that is often most valuable when you're in a position of needing it. And it sounds like, Abby, things are pretty great. It sounds like you're having a good time and that your life is nice and that this is just like, what do I do with this nice thing that's causing me some slightly conflicted feelings? So, you know what? This is valid too. Everything doesn't have to necessarily be a totally chaotic mess. I am really happy that you are in this position to be deciding whether or not to engage in what might be a particularly joyful experience for you. So there's a couple of aspects to, I guess, being married that are worth thinking about, right? And I think that Abby clearly kind of laid some of this stuff out. There is a ritual, which, you know, I'm pro ritual. I like rituals. There's the ritual of getting your friends together and standing up in front of them and saying, we love each other in a real and legally binding way. So there's that ritualized behavior. There is as Abby pointed out, the intersection with like deeply gendered roles, right? Marriage by default is assumed to be very gendered in most cultures. I would be hard pressed to think off the top of my head of a culture in which marriage and gender don't crash into each other like two high-speed trains. And then on top of all of that, there is the internal stuff. Like, will you feel different having performed the ritual? What changes will it make to your relationship? And then perhaps least romantic, and thus as a result, most interesting to me personally, there's all the legal stuff, both good and bad. So let's start there. Let's start with the thing that to me makes the most sense. If you will gain monetarily, legally, or any other sort of government official benefit from getting married, fucking do it. Like, if this means you're going to pay less taxes, if it means that you're going to be allowed into a hospital if your spouse is injured, if it means that if you ever have kids, that it will make adoption easier, if it will give you a +2 to your armor class for 7 days, then fucking do it, right? Because honestly, especially for queer people, we are faced with a lot of legalistic bullshit. We can be harassed systemically because of the kinds of people that we want to, for example, get married. If there is an advantage, if we can steal back even a crumb of those rights, then fucking get it. Like, I don't know what your like. I assume that you and the person that maybe is going to marry you, I assume you live in the same country, so this isn't going to be an immigration issue. But like, honestly, here's the thing, right? If you live in a Western culture, as I do, and as a lot of people do, if you live in one of these Western cultures, a lot of the society you live in enforces and encourages the relationship escalator. We've talked about this before, right? The government of the country you live in probably wants people to get married. They probably see marriage as a stabilizing force. They see it as leading to stable households. And they imagine that being married means that you can raise your kids better. They have a lot of biases towards married people, right? And they reflect those biases in tax breaks and the way that like next of kin shit works. Like a lot of the time for your relationship to be considered legally real, there has to be the you buy the license and you do the ritual and you do the thing, right? So, you know, I don't know. I think that marriage from that perspective is a nice way to get ours a little bit, right? To like protect ourselves from a system that even though it might not like us very much for being queer, or it might not like you very much for being a transgender person, if you're going to get better insurance out of the deal, right? If you're going to like increase any aspect of your legal life is going to get better by getting married, then fucking do it. That alone is a great reason. And I would readily encourage you to look at those things, right? See what legal benefits you're going to gain by entering this new arrangement. Now, the flip side of that is all of the other stuff that feels like it's mostly exciting to you. You know, I want to talk a little bit about the innate imbalance of how marriage can affect like non-hierarchical, non-monogamous relationships, etc. We'll talk about that in a second, but it can be super affirming, right? Like it's honestly like it feels to me like a wedding and getting married and the whole event, right? Not the state change from single to married, but the event of getting people together, the ritual of doing the thing, exchanging the rings, you know, tying your hands together, I don't know, standing on your head and drinking a Diet Sprite, whatever your wedding ritual is, it can be super reaffirming. Humans love rituals. We love repeated behaviors. We love like sacred acts. We like polishing up all the stuff we do with like fanciness. This is a totally normal thing, right? And I think that if it seems to you that it would be affirming to your relationship, it would be affirming to your gender identity, right? Because again, and this is really interesting, this idea that, and I think that this is something that it's easy for cis people to forget. And especially in an age in which we are struggling as a people to kind of get our hands on what gender like looks and feels like, I think we can discourage people from performing what would be considered normative expressions of gender, right? Like doing a gendered thing, like putting on a wedding dress and being a wife. There are going to be people who are going to look at you and be like, like, you know, maybe that's not like the queerest thing to do, but honestly, like if it's reassuring to you, to your gender, if it feels good to you to put on that dress and it would help you feel like good, if you want that saccharine silliness, don't let anybody else judge you, right? Don't let that happen, because you're allowed to do the corny saccharine thing if that's what you want, right? Like you're going to have curmudgeons. You probably have friends like me who will be like, married. But honestly, if they're your real friends, they're going to support you. They're going to show up. I get invited to my friends' weddings. I do the little act of rolling my eyes and pretending like I hate it. But honestly, seeing them happy is the only thing that's important. So like your friends, they're likely just waiting to support you and to go and to see you in your beautiful dress. And they are going to be so excited. It's going to be sick. But like the thing is, I think it's easy to overthink this stuff because it's so weighty in our kind of cultural zeitgeist. But honestly, you're just having a fun party and you get to dress up and everybody else gets to dress up and you're going to get to perform a ritual. Honestly, I wish that we could have ritualized parties more often. Like I wish that I could just like get a bunch of people together and be like, yeah, so I don't know, I'm trying to get this writing job, and it'd be really cool if all of you could perform this like give Adam your writing job energy, right? And then like, here's a cake. I made it. It's got a sigil on it. Let's all eat it. And then, you know, like why can't we just ritualize, birthday parties and like honestly, literally any event. Let's just make these rituals up ourselves. And while we're doing that, let's take a look at the ways that existing rituals can support and benefit us. Because I think especially for people who are not normally allowed to be portrayed as in love or participating in traditional behaviors like getting married, I think there's something so fucking empowering, right? Like you, Abby, and your wife getting married and taking the stage and celebrating your love isn't just good for you, right? It is definitely good for you. And I hope that it is something that if you do it, that it fosters a good, strong relationship that lasts a long time. But honestly, it's good for all of your friends. We need to celebrate each other's successes. We need to celebrate these like deep, meaningful relationships in a public way where everyone else who is there gets to see that it works sometimes. Now, I don't think that getting married means that your relationship is like finished or done or you win or whatever. But I think that for all of us, it's nice to have these moments of celebration, right? So like put on the dress, have people throw rice at you or whatever. I don't like come up with it yourself. But remember, it's your wedding. So you get to choose the aspects of it that you want to include and the aspects that you don't, right? You get to make every single decision along the way. And that's how it works. That's how you make it feel like it's yours, right? But weddings can be difficult. They can be expensive. They can be an emotional hit. God knows that it's a lot because there's all this pressure. So, you know, make sure that you have the time and energy to dedicate to it because you want it to be special, right? So take your time. You're not in any hurry. Look at the ways in which getting married might legally benefit you and help that make your decision. Honestly, just like as part of this process, talk to a lawyer. Be like, so how will things be different legally once I'm married? Like, how does this affect my current status? How is this going to change things? You know, because that's an aspect. And then sit down with this person that you might be getting married to and talk about what would, first of all, the wedding, and then second of all, the marriage itself, what would that look like, right? How are things going to be different afterwards? It is, and this is something that came up in chat. It is kind of a shame that being married and that weddings are this kind of funneled, societally approved way of bonding two people together, that we can't just say like, we're having a best friend party. This person and I, like it exempts certain people. I mean, this is how societal rituals work, right? They decide who's in and who's out and exempt some people and whatever. But again, like, this isn't about us. This isn't about anybody but you. And so if you want to do it, I say fucking go for it. Now, the trick is like, what will things be different like after you get married? Now, I don't know your relationship. I don't know the people around you. I don't know how that'll work. But I will say that it takes work. Coming from a perspective of somebody who tries to have non-hierarchical, like flattened relationships, there is a bias, right? There's an internal and an external bias that predisposes that romantic relationships are more important than friendships. Sexual relationships are more important than non-sexual ones. There is a bias that married people are better and deeper connected than any other kind of relationship. There's a lot of hierarchy that comes from simply existing in a social space, right? The kinds of things that you are exposed to and the innate socialization that gets done to you as you grow up prioritizes those things. So if you get married, there is a conversation that you need to have either as a group or one-on-one with each of the other people in your life that are important, and like reassure them that you getting married will not change innately your relationship with them. If that's what you believe, don't have these conversations if that's not true, right? If getting married is going to change your relationships with other people, let them know, right? Talk to them, get them to buy in, because what you're doing does affect them, right? It's really easy to just be like, well, this is how it is, right? Like, I didn't have a boyfriend before. I have a boyfriend now. This boyfriend is more important than all of you because they're my boyfriend. Oh, we're getting married now. So now the person I'm married to is more important than anyone else, because that's the ritual. That's part of the deal, where it's like you and this other person are now bonded together in this unbreakable. It's all a lot of weird bullshit to try to reinforce that monogamy and getting married are like the ultimate end goal of every relationship. Doesn't have to be. But what I think you can do is just acknowledge it, right? The first step towards diffusing problematic power structures in your relationships is to say, hey, this is a thing that is happening, right? I see this. I recognize that this could be a problem. I recognize that being married does shift the power structure, even if we don't necessarily want it to. But this is happening already, right? Like in your relationships, I assume you are recognizing power imbalances. You are addressing them. This one just happens to be a big, scary one. We deal with power imbalance and we deal with hierarchy in our relationships every day. It's just a question of deciding how we're going to do that work and what changes need to be made to make sure that things are safe. So include the other people who matter in your life in the process. Recognize that something big is changing for you, and you have people around you who care about you and who love you, and it'll be changing their lives as well. I think it's easy to just be like, oh, I'm getting married. Don't worry about it. Like I'm non-monogamous. I'm ahierarchical. It'll just be fine. I can just get married and it'll just work because of who I am. It's pretty much the same as like self-declaring like, well, I'm not a racist, so nothing I could do, is racist. Because I don't believe in racism. Like you're participating in a gendered cultural ritual that is meant to say this person is better than all other people. So you have to acknowledge that you're going to undermine that part of marriage as a thing, if that's something that you want. And it's going to be work, right? You're going to have to work to actively counter your socialization. And that's the price you pay for being like a decent person and not disappearing and abandoning all your friends, right? So I guess as with kind of like anything, my advice here is you don't necessarily have to think rationally about the whole thing, right? Yes, certainly think rationally about the way your wedding might affect your friends and your relationships. Think rationally about how it might affect your legal situation, but don't discount the deep-seated emotional stuff. This sounds like it's something that you really want. And honestly, I'm like you, Abby. I don't believe in forever either. We all die eventually. And I would rather get 1,000 divorces than stay in a relationship that didn't make me happy. And ideally, if you're getting married to somebody who's like cool and you can have this conversation with, you can honestly have a chat about like what's going to happen if we get sick of this wedding? What's going to happen if we don't want to be married anymore? I mean, straight cis people do it all the time, right? Prenups are a thing, but have this conversation, right? Talk to your person, talk to the people around you and be like, let's just have a chat about acknowledging that, yes, even though a lot of the language is forever and ever, amen, it might actually be prudent to be like, well, okay, so let's write vows, let's have a ritual, let's do the thing, but let's talk about what it might mean if we don't feel super engaged in this anymore. I think people see divorce as this like massive, terrifying thing because we're supposed to, because we're trained to, right? If marriage is super, super important, then ergo divorce naturally has to be equally important and equally bad, right? Which I think is horse shit, right? I think we can say, you know what? A divorce is just deciding we don't want to do this anymore. And that's a good point, right? Divorce tends to be expensive. People get caught up in this thing. So talk about it. Talk about what will happen at the end before you agree to start the thing. I think a lot of the time we get caught up in stuff and we want to rush into it. But it sounds like you're being very thoughtful and you want to live together for a while before you decide. Start having those conversations, right? Start chatting about those and figure out what it might look like if you decide you don't want to do it anymore, because you're allowed, right? Just like you're allowed to have the big ritual and wear the dress and do the fancy day, you're also allowed to just be like, I don't feel like being married to you anymore. Let's change our relationship. It's the same advice I would give anybody who, wants to have an engaged, fluid relationship that changes based on the needs of the people in it. But like, marriage is It's a whole complicated thing. So I don't know. You're doing it right. I think don't second guess yourself. Think about what you want. Talk to the people around you. You've got a support network of friends and relationships. Talk to them about how they feel. Engage your community. And then fucking throw a sick party. Just do it. If that's where you land, if you land on let's get married, have just like the best fun ever. Just have such a good time. Because honestly, watching other people that we care about celebrate how happy they are, that's why I go to weddings. I hate them. I hate marriage. I don't want to do it. But seeing my friends happy is like, it's pretty good, I guess. And trust me, your friends want to see you happy. So our second question, we got some more gender vibes in the second question. This one is interesting. Now I picked this question because I don't know, it resonates with me, and I think that there are going to be some men in the audience, men listeners who probably also feel this way sometimes too. So this is from an anonymous question asker, anon cis dude. Hey Adam, I am a cis dude that leans somewhat feminine in appearance and character. I've always joked if I had to put down a gender, I'd say David Bowie. This puts me in a strange position in the dating world. I've only dated women, and almost all of them have wanted to be more dominant or manly in our relationship and sexual relationships. This is okay sometimes, but it isn't exactly what I want. It's a bit hurtful just to hear. I can't count the number of times I've heard, I'd just be really attractive if I could be a bit manlier. And it's not precisely what I want from a sexual relationship either. I don't always want to be the powerful one or the one that initiates things or honestly, even the top in the relationship. I find myself envious of queer relationships with the relatively neutral relationship dynamics. And yet, even when I've dated queer women, they've been super uncomfortable with any expression of feminine quality on my part. I've expressed preferences and have expressed preferences for the dominant stereotype. The situation has me a bit confused. Sometimes I wonder if I might be trans, given that my gender identity and relationship sexual identity don't seem 100% compatible. Obviously, this is a larger question, and I don't have much in the way of dysphoria, but it's hard not to wonder if I'll ever be desired or loved as much or as I want to be loved. Thoughts? Yeah, so, it's easy, I think, for us to look at masculinity as being a thing that originates from and self-reflects for men. Right? The masculinity is something that men think and feel about themselves. And for a lot of it is, right? It's an internal thing. It's like, this is the way I, as a man, should be. This is the way that other men should be. But I think that there is an outer part, an external part to that too, where other people are affected by concepts of masculinity, whether they recognize it or not, right? People are socialized to expect a certain kind of behavior from men. And we develop the things that we are attracted to. We develop our sense of aesthetics. We think that we want certain behaviors, both because we do, but also because we are taught to, right? That strength, when applied to a man, is literal, right? It is being aggressive. It's being powerful. It's being toppy, right? And for men who don't want that or who struggle with that, it can really fuck with you, right? Because there are expectations of behavior, right? And this is true. This is true of anyone and their gender, right? You'll always have expectations placed in you based on other people's perception of your gender. That is just how it works. That's how gender works, right? It's a shorthand for a set of behaviors, but that's starting to shift. But I think it's interesting and honestly kind of unsurprising to hear that, you're looking elsewhere. You're saying, I'm going to try to date outside of like straight cis women and see if maybe that community has better ideas of how this stuff works. But we're all to a degree or another indoctrinated by our societal understanding of gender roles, right? This is something that is internalized. We apply it to ourselves. We say, I could just, I could get more dates if I was just manlier, or I shouldn't act feminine, and because that's gonna prevent me from attracting people. But like you say, you don't want that anyway. Like even if you were like acting manly, quote unquote, and you were exuding that big top energy, not the circus kind, the sex kind, but if you were doing that, then you would attract more people who want that kind of person, and then you just get locked into that cycle. So it's hard. It is challenging, and you're not the only one feeling this way. It's something that I've definitely felt before too, because I'm fine and comfortable being in that position. I feel like, okay, taking charge sometimes, but I don't always want that either. And like you, I think that I've had a lot of experience in my life where that's the assumption, where it's like, you are a man, ergo the most comfortable arrangement of behaviors is if you perform your gender and I perform mine, and we just do the dance that we were taught to do, even if maybe we don't want to do that dance. And I think that a lot of men come to this place, right? Whether it's about sex and like attracting people, or whether it's just about other like traditionally masculine behaviors that maybe you don't feel like doing, that don't fit for you. I think a lot of men come to a place where they're like, oh, maybe the problem is me, right? Maybe I'm not a man. Maybe I don't fit this idea of masculinity. So instead of masculinity changing, maybe I should change. Maybe I should change my gender identity so that it better fits what everybody else is trying to force on me. But like that may be the case. I'm not going to tell you how your gender identity works. That's a big question, and like talk to your friends and like have a longer engagement with them about it. Start this conversation, but it may simply be that like other people's expectations on you based on your gender might be, I don't know, a mistake on their part or closed-minded or whatever. I think that, we talk a lot, and by we, I mean like communities that engage in topics of gender. We talk a lot about the ways in which women particularly are expected to behave because of their gender. And I think for the most part, people are coming around on the idea that that's bullshit, that to expect a woman to be a caretaker, a child raiser, a food maker, right? If we assume all these domestic roles for women, it is putting them in a box they do not necessarily want to be in, right? But we don't talk quite as much because I don't think we're quite there yet. I think we need to continue this track, but we're not really there yet in terms of talking about putting men in a similar position, right? Like, I would love to see more discourse about this, about seeing ways that masculinity is expressed outside of traditional roles. And hey, if you're watching this and you have some information to share about that, if there's any like good videos or articles or anything you think are really cool, please like share them, because I think that it's really valuable for men to hear that they don't have to perform these gender roles, that they don't have to be manlier according to these things. Now, I know for our question asker, I know that it can be hard because backing down or changing or being something that you weren't before can be seen as like failure, right? Masculinity is all about like accomplishing goals and getting shit done and never quitting and never surrendering and like, don't cry, you big baby, get over here and be in charge, right? I think that there's a lot of that, and it makes it hard for us to negotiate being men and inhabiting masculinity and taking a step back, right? Being like, this didn't work for me, let's try something else, because that's failure, right? That's giving up. It's a whole mess, right? Masculinity, and this is sort of what we talk about when we talk about toxic masculinity, the idea that masculine behaviors aren't inherently bad, right? it's not inherently bad to be aggressive or initiate things or, being a top. None of those things are bad inherently, but there is this socialized idea of masculinity where you have to behave this way if you want to be a successful man. And yeah, like this is a thing that other men struggle with. You're not the only one. My advice, I guess, or what works for me is continuing to find and navigate relationships with this in mind, right? Knowing that these biases exist and knowing how much or to what degree I'm willing to engage in them. I mean, really, it's doing a one-person gender study and saying like, how much of the manly behavior does feel good? How often do I feel comfortable doing the manly thing? There's my boundary, right? This is where masculinity exists for me. You can customize it. You can tailor it. You don't have to be the same way that other men are. And you can express that to your people. You can express it to your friends. You can express it to the people that you're around. When you start engaging in like sexy stuff, like early on sexy conversations, or like that early kind of flirtatious phase, like learn to make it clear what you're into and what you're not into. So that way, if people are looking for someone who is 100% all the time existing in a traditionally masculine space, they can say, okay, well, like, here's what I'm looking for. And you can work together to come to that place, right? This shouldn't be a surprise for anyone, like what you're into, right? By the time it comes for you to take that role, right? To be toppy in this relationship, you should already know that that's okay. And that's what you're both comfortable with. I think a lot of the time we don't engage in these conversations early enough. And so we can get into positions where you're like, oh, I'm expected to perform my gender for you in a way that we never talked about. And so we're falling back to this societal default, right? This straight kind of heteronormative, like there's a default sort of pseudo Platonic ideal of what a relationship, especially between a man and a woman, should be. And when we don't take the effort to consciously avoid that behavioral set, we fall back to it, right? It's where we drift back to if that's what's the norm for you. I personally think that there are some things about being masculine that I think are cool. Like, I don't know. There are a few things that I identify with in terms of being a man, and there are a few things that I don't. And for me, part of being alive, part of being a person is consistently checking in with myself about that, right? Understanding my own gender expression and what I am into. So I think, I don't know, I guess I don't want you to give up on masculinity yet. I think that it's easier to say, well, masculinity is toxic and it's got a bunch of shit in it that I don't want. I'm going to throw it aside. I'm not going to identify that way anymore as a means of like repulsion, but it doesn't seem to me. And again, talk to a therapist, talk to people who are professionals at this. I am just an interested and concerned amateur with a bunch of experience having relationships with people. So I can't tell you whether you are trans or not, Anon. I mean, fuck it, right? Like, try out new pronouns, play a role-playing game and play a non-binary character. See how it feels being addressed that way. There are lots of ways to kind of explore that stuff. But to me, this feels like to me you are struggling, as I think many people have, with prescriptive gendered behavior. And I think that you can reassess what it means to be a man, right? So here's something that I've done under the tutelage of my counselor before. But here's something I've done that helped. So, because I've been in this place where I've been like, I can't decide if I just want to change what masculinity feels like, or if maybe masculinity isn't for me. It's like, do you tailor the suit, or should you just not wear suits and put something else on, right? It's about deciding kind of what angle you want to come at. So for me, something that helped is I literally just made a list of traits that I consider masculine. I was like, what are masculine things, right? And I made this list. And then I split the list into things that I feel like good about and things that I feel not good about or like disinterested in. And I was like, kind of surprised at how many things I was like, no, I'm actually pretty okay with identifying with like this list of things. And the stuff that I didn't like, it didn't make me, looking at the list, it didn't make me feel like I was doing it wrong. I was like, oh, this is just stuff I'm not that into. Like, I'm not that into sports, or I'm not that into competition, right? In general. I don't get angry, which is like, anger is a fairly masculine thing. But I think honestly, just like lay it all out, look at it, and take a look at what masculinity kind of like feels like to you. But keep in mind too that you are allowed to express yourself in any way you want without it invalidating your gender. It's interesting to me that you have kind of like a gender presentation role model. I think that's really cool. I think David Bowie is an interesting choice. There's a lot that I could dig into about David Bowie and like archetypes and like donning ceremonial accoutrement. I think that David Bowie would be excited about the idea of you looking at him as a gender icon for helping you figure your own stuff out. I think that's healthy, right? I think it's nice to have role models or like people that we can kind of see doing something similar to what we want. I don't think, honestly, I just don't think that, I don't think that you need to settle. I don't think that you need to be the big strong man that maybe you don't want to be. I also think you can be sometimes. It is hard. It is hard when people put their expectations on you and you feel like you have to perform that role to keep them. But work on it with people. Talk about this stuff early. Don't feel like you need to bend. You are allowed to express feminine or masculine qualities. You are allowed to build your gender for yourself. I guess keep that in mind. I know it's tough because I think the real trick here is I want to be wanted. People want a certain kind of person. If I behave this way, I will be wanted. But what you really need to kind of rewire your brain is, this is who I am. This is what I want to be. I need to find people who will support and enjoy that. Don't change for other people. Find other people who will like you for who you are. I promise they're out there. I promise they exist. I don't know what your local like dating pool looks like. But I promise that those people, there are people out there who are going to be like, yes, this whole thing you're doing, it's hot as fuck. Give it to me. I promise. This is the thing, right? Is that if we eschew the narrative, if we cast off all of our societal norms and then rebuild something, it can be hard to find people to whom that might appeal. We have to explain to them. We have to explain to them kind of what we're about. You're not a Big Mac, right? You're a fucking artisanal cheeseburger, Anon. And there is somebody out there who can't wait to put you in their mouth. Metaphorically. I mean, maybe literally. I don't know. I don't know, you beautiful cheeseburger. You figure it out. So, yeah, I mean, it's a whole ass thing, right? And by it, I mean gender and relationships and shit. I don't know. I figured there's nobody out there. There's nobody on this earth that hasn't at some point or another been forced to behave, to perform their gender in a way that wasn't comfortable for them, right? There are young girls being made to wear dresses. There are boys on football teams that never wanted to be there. And there is a lot of struggle with gender expectations. You are not alone, Anon. I think this is a very common feeling. And I think talking to people, I think saying like, listen, maybe this time you tie me up. How does that sound? Right? You talk about it in advance. I don't know. I think a lot of people are scared. I think a lot of people are scared to have like conversations about meaningful shit when they first meet someone. But like, when else are you going to do that? I mean, I get that it takes time to trust people. I get that it takes time to like feel safe. And that's obviously a thing. But like, I don't know. I think that we all have to just kind of be honest with ourselves and each other about the things that we want. Life is short and fundamentally meaningless. So ask for what you want. Talk about what you need. Say no to people that want you to do things you don't want to do. Yeah, you're going to like interact less, but again, better to have fewer, more positive interactions than to be forced to behave a way you don't want to just to get what you need. And really what you really need is like space to perform your gender the way that works for you. So keep looking for it. It's out there. Those people are out there. There are people who will find you and they will do things to you. I promise. You gotta be patient, tough it out. Question number 3. This one is great. Question number 3 is fun because I read it and I think I can just answer it in one sentence and then we'll spend some time with it. So Gemma, I assume it might be Gemma, but I think it's Gemma. So Gemma asks, I'm in my 30s and in the last year or so, I started to fantasize about being with women and women in general. Gemma is also a woman. When I allowed myself to think about that more seriously in the last month. Oh my God, Gemma, I'm sorry. Sneeze in the middle of your question. Now I'm all blurry. So anyway, I'm in my 30s. And in the last year or so, I started to fantasize about being with women and women in general. When I allowed myself to think about that more seriously in the last months or so, I noticed that when I think about sex or who I'm attracted to, I almost exclusively think about women. But I'm in a relationship with a man I like very much and have a lot in common with, but we don't have that much sex, partly because I don't really enjoy it. I never had a relationship or anything else with a woman, but I'm very drawn to them. Here's my question. Can I really be not straight if I didn't notice that until way into my 30s? Seems like a dumb question, but with every coming out story I hear, I get more uncertain because all those happen when people are teens or even younger. I can't help but feel separate from that, but not comfortable with thinking of myself as straight anymore either. Gemma, I think you're gay. Well, thanks for coming, everybody. So like, here's the thing. You didn't like miss the cutoff point for coming out. You're not going to be like, hey, everybody, I think that I'm a lesbian. So, and they're going to be like, you know what? If you're going to come out, 2017 was your cutoff day. You're stuck being straight now for the rest of your life. Sorry, you didn't file your gay paperwork. And now you're sorry. So like, honestly, you can come out anytime you want. And as an oldster myself, right? As an oldster, I didn't really like coming out isn't one thing, right? It isn't like you pull the cloth away and suddenly you're there in your fucking rainbow tuxedo being gay in a big way. It's like it happens granularly, right? Like I kind of came out a little bit in high school to some people and I like thought I was bi for a while. And then I was like, that doesn't really feel like right to me. And I kind of forgot about it. And then there was like a straight year. It was like a straight year and a half. It wasn't straight at all. There was like a year and a half where I was like, yeah, I'm pretty sure I'm gay, not interested in women. And so I was like, all right, I'm gay for a while, sort of to some people. And then I came out to the people I worked with. And then I came out to like my audience on Twitch. There's an episode of Swan Song where I talk about being queer for the first time on Twitch, like at all. It's just like a briefest mention. I remember it and I'll never, ever forget it. It was during the pre-show of one of the episodes of Swan Song. And we were talking about Daniel Craig. We were arguing about whether or not Daniel Craig was hot. Yes. Tris knows what I'm talking about. That's the first time that I like said out loud on Twitch that I was a queer person, right? That's the first time I ever said that to this space. And now fucking look at me. So we come out over and over and over, right? My next big coming out kind of moment was being a part of the first LGBT panel at TwitchCon, right? Going to Folsom. That summer was like another sort of coming out for me. And honestly, it just keeps fucking happening. Apparently I'm Transylvanian too. It just keeps happening. You don't get away with just coming out once. So like, yeah, okay, maybe you missed your uncomfortable, I want to take a girl to prom. Maybe you missed that opportunity. Maybe you missed your like, I'm experimenting because I'm in college phase. But like, fuck all that. You want to come out today for the first time? Do it. I support you, Gemma. I support you. And I'm sure there are lots of other people who do too, right? So, are you allowed to be gay in your 30s? Of course you are. Of course you are. But it's fucking scary. It's challenging, right? Like my experience being in relationships with women is much, much higher because I spent like 20 years doing it. My experience with dating non-binary people and other men, much, much smaller. And so I feel like it's easier just to keep playing the straight game, right? But you don't have to. You get to decide the people that you're into. You get to come out whenever you want. It can seem sometimes, as a person in my mid-30s, it can seem like the kids today are having an easier time of it, right? You can look at things like Tumblr and Twitter and the various places where teens hang out, Instagram, and you can be like, hey, so, man, it would have been nice for me if I had that when I was a kid. That'd be awesome. I would have come out at fucking age 12. It would have happened right away. I would have been fine. But like, you know what? It's cool. It's cool to have delayed it. It would be nice, certainly, to have lived our truth our whole lives. But like, honestly, for me at least, this is a fundamental part of the being queer experience, is like coming out to people, having to address that maybe your gender or sexuality isn't what people expressed or expected. And like, thankfully, we, in addition to the teens, can all benefit from this much larger community of queer people around us, right? We can support each other, much like I am doing, hopefully, for you today, and how the audience is doing, right? Everyone in Twitch chat. Now, Gemma, I don't know if you're in chat or not, or if you're watching this on YouTube, or maybe, Gemma, you will never see this. Maybe you just submitted the question and left. But there are people supporting you right now, right? Everyone in chat is very excited about the idea that you might be able to live your gay truth, right? So you will find people, whether they are in your day-to-day life or whether they are in the internet sphere you occupy, wherever you might be, Gemma, there will be people who are like, yeah, gay Gemma is awesome. The Gemma that I thought was straight, also cool, but this Gemma is awesome. And they will be excited to hear that. Now, the tricky bit of this whole equation is that you are in a relationship with a man right now. And there's only 2 paragraphs for me to learn everything I need to know about you. But it sounds to me like maybe, Gemma, you don't want to be in this relationship with this guy. Being in a relationship with a man doesn't make you any less gay, but it sounds like you don't want to have sex with this guy. I mean, you said you don't really enjoy it, but you like him. And those 2 things are not mutually exclusive. I think you can still have a relationship with somebody where you don't fuck them. I mean, I don't, there isn't anything else to say, really. Like, you don't have to completely abandon this relationship you have. But if you're having sex with somebody that you don't want to have sex with, you can stop and should. And it doesn't mean you have to throw the whole relationship out. I worry that the person you're in this relationship with is going to turn into an asshole. I want to advise you to be like, hey, I love you. I mean, you didn't even say that. Hey, I like you very much. We have a lot in common. I value our relationship, but I'd like to change it. I don't want to have sex anymore. I value you. I want us to be close, but I want to stop having sex with you. How can we have a relationship? I hope in my heart that this person will say, that's sad. I like the sex part of our relationship. I want to rebuild that or something. But I respect you and I want you to have what you want, what makes you happy, right? I want them to be on board with this whole process for you. I want them to be like, yes, gay Gemma, that's awesome. I am so glad you are figuring out who you are and figuring out what you want. I hope that they are cool and supportive. But as I mentioned in the second question, we sometimes get caught up in behavioral expectations or socialized behaviors, right? My worry is that this person you're in a relationship with is going to lean into, well, I am now less of a man, right? There is a disgusting, toxic narrative about like men whose partners figured out that they are lesbians and left them for another woman. There's this like really gross, like that's an emasculating thing, which is, it sucks. It sucks. But it is possible that that person is going to come face to face with that bullshit narrative, and it's going to be something they don't respond well to. I don't know them at all. I want to believe that you're a judge of good character, Gemma, that you wouldn't be with this person if they were like an abusive douchebag, but just make sure that you have support and that you are safe negotiating that. I don't know this guy, so I have to assume, but like, you know him. Talk to someone, right? Talk to someone you trust who knows both of you about negotiating the change or maybe end of this relationship. It might be rough, right? It might be tough to get through this bit. Coming out isn't always easy, because, you know, we're inviting people into our truth, and sometimes they don't respond very well to it. Yeah. So you and your partner and the people around you are gonna have to contend with this. But I hope that it goes easily. I hope that they're like, I care deeply about you and I want you to live your life. I want you to be who you are and I support you, and it sucks for me and I'm sad for myself, but I'm going to get over it. Because this person that's with you, they are going to be much better off being with somebody and having sex with somebody who wants to have sex with them. Like that, it's going to be better for both of you to not keep trying to mash your parts together in a way that nobody wants. Stop doing that. It's going to be better for both of you. But it might be that this person has a hard time figuring that out and getting there. So talk to people you trust. Tell them what you told me. Be like, yo, I think I might be gay. Get yourself into a relationship with somebody who is excited about that, right? Find another lady and get your gay on and see what that is like for you. There is a lot of weird narrative, especially for older people. And I say that cringing myself to death because I'm also older. I'm 35. Not for long. But like, yo, talk to people. Get people to buy into where you're at. Have people around you that meet you where you are. It can be scary to be like, hi, I'm 35 and I just figured out that I'm gay. Because there are going to be people who are established, long time, having come out like lesbians who might be like, nope, I refuse to date you. You just figured out you're gay. You're going to flake on me. I need somebody who's already like got it sorted. that can be a challenge. But like, you're not the only one, right? You're not the only one. There are a bunch of people, because this is the thing. We look at these teens and their fucking TikToks and they're being gay or whatever, and we're like, damn, I'm so envious. But as that rises, right, as the prevalence of like people being comfortable coming out, it works for us too, right? The whole idea that anybody can be gay anytime they want, that is, you can just come out and do that thing. It's the same as anything else, right? The advice I gave Anon in the second question, just know what you want, understand yourself and where you're at, communicate that to people. You will find other people who are either just coming out with you, or you'll find people who remember what it was like to come out and how confusing and hard it is, and they will want to help you, right? Like for me, something I really, really like is talking to people who are experiencing stuff for the first time that I've experienced myself and been through. I love mentorship. I love giving advice. Hi, hello, welcome to Hot for Teacher, right? I like being able to encourage people to live their truth, be who they are. And I bet you can find someone who will find that experience of being more experienced, of knowing things and helping you and sharing that with you. They're going to find that super rewarding. Find yourself a gay mentor. Date them or don't. I don't know. You are standing at the gates, the beautiful rainbow pearly gates of a community that is ready to invite you in. Right? So welcome. Hi. It's kind of cool over here. It's like weird and awkward, and sometimes we have to redesign everything about being a person, and gender is confusing, but like, yo, come on in. We're all going through this shit together. Come on through. You're allowed. It doesn't matter how old you are. You could be 80 and I would be answering this question the same way. I feel good about this. I feel good about getting to do this. Like answering these questions, seeing how supportive chat is, right? Like honestly, and I know normally I don't really like address the chat because I know a lot of people watch this on YouTube and stuff, but like part of why I keep chat open while I do these episodes, while I talk about this stuff, is because for me, it's a big positive emotion boost just to see how like supportive and conversant everyone is. Like it means so much to me. So thank you for submitting your questions. And thank you for coming to today's episode and listening to me yap about relationship stuff. I hope that Abby has an awesome wedding. I hope that Anon finds some sexy people to step on them. And I hope that Gemma enjoys pinning that rainbow flag and marching in the big parade. And thank you for letting me be a part of your lives in some small way. If you have a question for me, if you have something that you think would be cool for me to discuss, or just honestly want like some advice about, you can submit it to www.adam-koebel.com/hotforteacher. Little dashes in between there. There's a link. You just click it. You're good to go. Submit your question. I can't get to every question. I get a lot of questions and I can't answer every single one, but I try to answer the ones that I think will help the most people. So even if you think that maybe you are alone, you are the only person who have ever had this problem, you're not, I promise. And so it is a great opportunity for me to bring that up and to let everybody know, like, look, we all struggle with gender and relationships and coming out and all of these things. These are pretty universal for us, and we're here to help one another. And to that point, if you want to help your trans friends, check out Trans Heart October. They're raising funds to help connect trans people to resources, to communities. Living as a trans person is very challenging. There is a lot. I don't have to go through any of this stuff as a cis person myself, but being close to trans people and seeing the struggles they go to, it is so important that we as cis folks use our resources, use our platforms to help support groups like Trans Lifeline. So if you can, go to that space, click on the link or hit it up in chat, and donate some money. Check out how you can help. Trans Lifeline does a ton of really good stuff. And if you are a trans person and you're feeling like alone or in danger, or you just need to feel like there are other people going through the same shit you are, check it out, right? Go to Trans Lifeline, check out Trans Heart October. I know they're doing a ton of other stuff on Twitch. So get out there and support your trans comrades in their struggle, because you know they do it for you. That's it for me. This has been episode number 36. Hot for Teacher. You have been great. Thank you for your contributions in chat. Thank you for your questions, everybody. We will see you next time with more questions, more feelings, more relationship stuff. Bye, everybody.